Imagine a vast, uncharted ocean dotted with thousands of mysterious islands. For centuries, explorers have sailed into these waters, driven by a singular dream, finding the one legendary hidden vault that contains enough wealth to change their lives forever. Time and again, captains bet everything, their ships, provisions, and savings, on a single treasure map. They sail to that one specific island, ignoring all other possibilities, only to watch in horror as the landmass collapses into the sea, or they arrive to find the vault completely empty. But there is an alternative approach. Imagine another explorer, we'll call her Maya. While other captains are busy arguing over rumors of a massive, jewel-filled vault, Maya sits quietly in the local tavern, systematically purchasing fragments of thousands of different ordinary maps. She understands a mathematical truth about the ocean. While some maps will lead to dead ends, a massive collection ensures that the majority of her expeditions will yield a steady, reliable stream of gold. This dynamic captures the exact psychological trap that destroys the retirement accounts of everyday American investors. Every day, people bet their entire financial futures on a single company stock. They listen to this silent passenger of greed, which whispers they have found a sure thing and can bypass the slow work of traditional navigation. When that one basket drops, the devastation is absolute. Protecting your livelihood requires abandoning the search for a singular prize. The most successful investors secure their futures by shifting their entire strategy toward the steady accumulation of fractional pieces across the entire map. Before you can chart a safer course, you have to understand the specific dangers in the water. Financial experts categorize investment risk into two distinct buckets. The first is systematic risk, which operates like a massive, continent-wide hurricane. These are macroeconomic forces, like inflation eating away at purchasing power, rising interest rates, or global recessions. When this storm hits, every vessel on the water feels the impact. Because these forces are universal, they affect the entire economic system simultaneously. The second danger is unsystematic risk. This is the collapsing island. It is the highly localized danger that affects just one isolated company or one specific industry. If a CEO makes a disastrous business decision or a single corporation goes bankrupt because of a faulty product, that mechanical failure causes a fire on one specific ship, leaving the thousands of other ships sailing around it unharmed. This reveals an empowering truth about the financial markets. While you cannot control the systematic storms of inflation or recessions, you have absolute control over neutralizing these unsystematic collapsing islands. By spreading your money across different industries and sectors, a localized corporate bankruptcy is smoothed over by the performance of the hundreds of other companies in your portfolio that are doing just fine. Understanding the mechanics of these two distinct risks is the dividing line between an educated investor and someone playing Russian roulette with their life savings. To see what happens when Americans ignore unsystematic risk, we have to look at the history of the modern retirement system. A generation ago, corporate America largely relied on traditional pensions. The government imposed strict rules on these plans, mandating that they could not hold more than 10% of their assets in the company's own stock. But as the landscape shifted toward the 401k, the burden of investment risk transferred directly to the individual worker. Crucially, that 10% diversification guardrail vanished. The most devastating example of this concentrated risk occurred with the collapse of the Enron Corporation in 2001. Enron was a titan of the energy sector, universally praised by Wall Street. Inside the company, employees funneled their paychecks directly into Enron stock. At the time the company filed for bankruptcy, an astonishing 62% of the assets held within Enron's 401k retirement plan consisted exclusively of Enron stock. This voluntary concentration was driven by the deceptive cheerleading of executive leadership. In internal emails, the CEO touted the stock to workers as an incredible bargain. Believing they held the ultimate treasure map, lower-level employees bought heavily. When the company imploded due to accounting fraud, Enron stock became worthless. Over 20,000 employees simultaneously lost their jobs and $1 billion in life savings. The Enron disaster was part of a widespread epidemic. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, familiarity bias convinced workers that their own companies were invincible. When the retail chain Color Tile filed for bankruptcy, employees lost everything because over 83. Even at successful companies, congressional hearings showed that Procter & Gamble employees held nearly 95% of their retirement in company stock, while Polaroid workers saw their futures vanish when that company went bankrupt. The math is unforgiving. No matter how much you trust your employer or believe in a stock tip, holding your entire net worth in one company guarantees your exposure to catastrophic, unsystematic failure. To avoid this fate, financial experts utilize two tools. The first is asset allocation. The Securities and Exchange Commission explains this using the analogy of a street vendor. If a vendor only sells sunglasses, they make profits on sunny days but sell nothing when it rains. If they only sell umbrellas, they thrive in a storm but starve during a heat wave. The wise vendor stocks both. By mixing asset categories, like volatile stocks for growth and stable bonds for safety, you ensure your portfolio survives regardless of the economic weather. The exact ratio of sunglasses to umbrellas you should hold is dictated by two factors. The first is your time horizon, the number of years before you need to spend the money. A younger professional has decades to wait out slow economic cycles. The second is your risk tolerance, your psychological ability to watch your account balance go down without panicking and selling everything. Once you decide on your allocation, the second step is diversification. True diversification requires pooled investments, such as mutual funds and exchange-traded funds. These investment vehicles gather small amounts of cash from millions of everyday investors to create a massive pool. That money is then used to instantly buy microscopic fractions of thousands of different companies all at once, neutralizing the risk of any single company sinking your ship. But even planned portfolios require maintenance due to portfolio drift. If you set a 60-40 mix of stocks to bonds and the economy booms, your stocks will grow much faster. Suddenly, stocks might make up 80% of your portfolio, leaving you highly vulnerable if a market storm hits. To fix this, you must engage in rebalancing, selling off a portion of your winning stocks and using that cash to buy more of your lagging bonds, restoring your original target ratio. Shifting money away from an asset class that is making you rich feels unnatural, yet this mechanical discipline systematically forces you to execute the golden rule of investing. You are automatically buying low and selling high. When we look outside of theory, the data confirms how successful Americans navigate the markets. According to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, market participation is growing. By 2022, 58.1% of American households held direct or indirect investments in the capital markets. The driving force behind this participation is the mutual fund. These pooled investment vehicles are owned by over 74 million U.S. households today. More than 80% of mutual fund-owning households under the age of 65 were initially introduced to these investments through workplace retirement plans. Yet the data also highlights a brutal wealth divide. The typical household utilizing these pooled investment tools and earning over $50,000 holds roughly $116,900 in savings and investments. Conversely, the typical household earning below that threshold possesses a median of only $2,500. This data tracks a middle class that relies heavily on the structural guardrails of the modern 401k. By utilizing these automated, diversified pools, millions of households are participating in the growth of the broader economy without the need for insider knowledge or the risk of picking a single collapsing company. You can apply these mechanics to your own accounts today. First, audit your workplace retirement plan. Log in and see exactly what you own. To avoid the familiarity bias trap that ruined the Enron workers, ensure you never hold more than 10% of your total portfolio in the stock of the company you work for. Second, establish a clear asset allocation. If your goal is decades away, weight your portfolio with broad market mutual funds or ETFs to capture long-term growth. If you prefer a hands-off approach, utilize a target date fund, which uses a preset algorithm to automatically adjust your risk as you get closer to retirement. Finally, set up automatic rebalancing. Review your portfolio every 6 to 12 months, and if your assets have drifted off target, trim your winners to bolster your lagging accounts. Long-term wealth is built on patience and wide accumulation, not high-stakes gambling. If you found this breakdown of diversification helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And let us know in the comments, how did you first learn to balance your own workplace retirement account? The map to financial independence is already drawn. You just have to choose to follow it.